For those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Jacqueline Harris and I'm a natural fertility expert, a naturopath, and I have a special interest in working with couples who are going through fertility treatments to help them conceive their babies, but just generally love working with people to help them create the baby and the family that they dream of. If you haven't already heard me before, hi, you may not know, I've been on this journey myself. I've been through fertility treatments. I have 3 beautiful girls through IVF. But that journey for me started already after I'd been working in the field of natural fertility, probably for about 10 years by the time we actually started our IVF cycles. So I've got this really interesting mix of what it's like to be through it personally, but professionally I've worked with hundreds of couples that have been trying to conceive, and as I mentioned, both naturally and through IVF. And as I'm working in clinic week by week, it often happens that there are common themes that come up. And in the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks even, there's been this common theme that's presented. And I'm not going to say this is new, because this cycle kind of comes and goes for me often when I'm in clinic. But I'm in a cycle at the moment where I really feel very passionate to talk to you and remind you that you must have the semen analysis taken into the equation very, very carefully and closely. So what often happens in clinic is that I see a couple come in and maybe there's been something identified like polycystic ovarian syndrome or endometriosis, and the semen analysis, I've actually had times where it's not even been done, completely just overlooked. And then I've also had times where it's been brushed over, sort of like, oh, well, it's not ideal, but there's this endometriosis, or it's not ideal, but there's polycystic ovaries, we need to factor that in. When, if you're taking into the equation that there's 2 pieces of information coming together to make this baby, there's the information from the sperm and there's the information from the egg, we have to make sure that the information coming from the sperm is great. We have to make sure that the fertility potential of the sperm is ideal, and we have to make sure that the sperm are capable of getting there in volumes, in large enough numbers to help actually fertilize the egg. Now, let me just say that there are a lot of amazing general practitioners, amazing fertility specialists, amazing IVF doctors who all take this into very close consideration. So if you're currently working with a doctor who's doing this for you, then I think that you're into a good one, and be happy and, keep that relationship going, keep it as a working relationship. If you're questioning whether or not this information is being factored into your equation closely, then I'm hoping to educate you tonight. Honestly, male factor fertility or issues with the sperm is something that I could talk for hours and hours and hours about, and I do hope that over time I can educate you more and more and more about male fertility. But tonight I really want to bring into your awareness some key factors about sperm and your semen analysis. And then, as always, I like to give you 3 clear things that I think that you need to make sure that you're covering to help with your fertility potential. So in clinic, if you haven't already heard me spoke, or if you have, I'm going to say it again. So it's been 14 years since I first started working with fertility, and it's been very, very interesting to me to watch what the World Health Organization consider normal as a normal, healthy semen analysis. It's been very interesting to watch the rapid decline in the numbers of normal sperm. Now, how they come up with this is by looking at large samples of semen analysis and determining what the average and the norm is. And when I first started working with fertility, while the average that they were seeing, they were happy with sort of around 20 million. Ideally, I wanted to see them at around 50. And most of the time I could get them there, or that's what a lot of the time we were seeing that. But now the average that we're seeing is 15 million. So, in 14 years, I've seen it drop from 20 million to 15 million as the average. I've also seen the normals change from 30%, which means they're saying, only 30% normal sperm and 70% abnormal sperm. Now what we're looking at, with a slight change in the way that they're actually assessing this, is that they're happy to see 4% normal sperm. So in other words, they're saying if 96% of the sperm are abnormal, that's still okay. It kind of blows my mind a little bit to think that we're saying that that's okay when we're actually trying to help enhance the fertility of people. I guess that's a little bit of the difference in what I'm trying to do when I'm working with a couple and with a man, is that I do actually want to see or maximize his fertility potential, not just make sure it's sitting at the average or what someone might say is okay. Because if we can see those normals much closer to 10%, then of course the fertility potential is going to be even greater than if we're seeing normal sperm down around 4%. So let me generally run through how this might go in terms of actually getting a semen analysis done. If you haven't already, if you're watching with me live and you have had a semen analysis done, just comment yes and let me know. And if you haven't, say no, so I can get a feel for actually who's there. If you don't want to say, that's okay too. So what generally happens is that maybe you go through and you're trying to conceive, and depending on your age, it may be that your general practitioner doesn't want to do any investigations until you've sort of been trying for 12 months. And then it might be that you have it may be that your doctor goes straight in and does analysis on the woman, checking that she's ovulating, doing some day 2 or 3 blood tests. If her cycle's particularly long and there's not clear signs of ovulating, maybe doing an ultrasound and checking on the ovaries, making sure there's not polycystic ovaries. If that comes up as positive, like I said, a semen analysis might not be something that they do every time. But ideally, as soon as you start any investigations, it's a great idea for the partner, the male partner, to be having a semen analysis done as well. A semen analysis could even be done preventatively. When you're first thinking about trying for a baby, you could go in and ask for a semen analysis to actually get an idea on whether there's anything that needs to be worked on, because it's such a simple test. Some men feel uncomfortable about it, but honestly, for the amount of tests that a woman might have to go through, masturbating into a cup really isn't the biggest problem in terms of the fertility journey. So what might happen 12 months down the track, you might go and actually get the semen analysis done. And then from there, like I said, often the frustrating part is that it can sometimes come back borderline, and they'll be told, it's okay, would be better if it was a bit higher, but nothing really to worry about. And oftentimes they get the information, there's nothing that you can do about it. But there is absolutely a lot of stuff you can do. I'm probably not going to get into all of that tonight, but just trust me, you're going to keep learning from me more and more, because there's a lot we can do with the semen analysis. With the semen analysis, what they're looking at is some common parameters, and I'm just going over the very basics for those of you that are just starting on this journey and you haven't been through a gamut of tests, you're still learning. I think it's important to understand this. So first off, they might be checking for the pH of the semen. They might be checking for the consistency and the volume of semen that's actually there. And then with the actual sperm, they're checking how many are there, which is the count. They're checking the motility, which is how well the sperm are actually swimming. And then they're checking the morphology, which is, are the sperm, or how many of the sperm are normal versus how many of the sperm are abnormal. Now let me run through some pretty standard figures that they're saying is normal now, which is 15 million sperm. So that's the count, 15 million. They might be looking to see the motility, anything above 40. But I really also like to pay a lot of close attention to how many of those are rapidly moving. So they'd be called rapid progressives. If that's not on your semen analysis, you do want to have that part done. And then in terms of morphology, the doctors are often looking to see that, like I mentioned earlier, above 4% normal sperm, which is not a huge amount. So I said that was saying that 96% of the sperm can be abnormal. Now, sperm are different to the egg in that they take 3 months to develop. So the life cycle is around 72 days. So that means that anything that has happened in the male's health or lifestyle for that 3 months prior to the semen analysis, that it can impact upon the results that you're actually going to get. which means that when you're trying naturally, every month you're trying has really been impacted upon by what's already been happening for the last 3 months. It means that if you're deciding to go through fertility treatment through IVF or insemination, you need to make sure that you're giving yourself 3 months to prepare so that the sperm are as healthy as they possibly can be. What that also means is that it's constantly changing. So if your partner, or if you're the male watching this, if you have a perfect semen analysis or it's looking great, we can't just rule that off and tick that and say that that's it, we don't have to worry about your body ever again. Because let's say you get a really bad viral infection 1 month with a super high fever, or you go through a significant amount of stress, or you go out for a few nights of really heavy binge drinking, it's possible that those could be impacting the semen analysis at another point in time. Conversely, if you get a semen analysis that doesn't look so great, it's also important to have it retested again to make sure, so we can get a bit of an idea. One, if it's consistently the same, there might be something going on that I need to work with or address. If you just have one semen analysis and then you have 2 or 3, so 1 looks abnormal and 2 or 3 look great, then it's possible that something that was happening in the 3 months before that one abnormal semen analysis was the thing that actually impacted upon those results. So we never just settle at one semen analysis. What I want to get in with you though tonight is what I think that you can begin to look at in terms of male factor and whether this is actually influencing your fertility potential or not. So the 3 things that I want you to focus on tonight, first is the analysis. I'm going to talk in a bit more detail with you about this. The second is that we need to address any areas that could be impacting upon it. And the third thing that we're going to focus on tonight, second step is to assess what could be impacting it. And the third thing is to address what might be happening in your environment or your surroundings that might be impacting upon the semen analysis. There is so much in my brain that I would love to share with you tonight, but I literally can't do it all in this video. But there's a whole lot of things that we could talk about in terms of diet, specific nutrient supplements, and I promise I will come to that in another video with you. But I need to make sure first that you've got a really thorough assessment done, and we need to make sure that the information that we're getting from that assessment is actually helping us work out which supplements would be beneficial for you and what we actually need to work on. So let's break down those 3 steps. The first thing that we want to do is analyze. And when I'm looking at a semen analysis, and if it's not with me, you need to make sure someone else is looking at your semen analysis this way. We need to analyze it from optimal. Optimal means, so what gives it the best chance to help with fertility potential, and if it's as good as it can be, what does that look like? Because truthfully, I don't just want to see the sperm at 4%. Ideally, I would like to see the abnormals sit up around 10%. And in terms of count, I really don't want to just see it around 15 million. I do want to see it higher than that, and I do have specific ranges that I look for in terms of count, motility, rapid progressives, morphology. Each area, there's specific parameters and specific ranges that I look at. And I need you to make sure that the semen analysis that you're looking at has been analysed from those reference ranges. Because if you are in this group, I'm assuming that you're having some trouble, some issues with fertility. That's why you're here. And so we need to make sure it's as good as it can be. The human biology is fascinating, and there are factors within the uterus and the egg that can actually help compensate if there's an issue with the sperm. And likewise, if the environment or there's a factor with females' fertility potential, if the semen analysis is through the roof, super high, then that's going to help with fertility as well. So it is possible that even if there's an issue with female factor, an issue that's come up, even if the semen analysis is looking kind of average, so-so for the man, if we can get that even better, that's possibly going to help with fertility for the 2 of you as a combination together. So we want to make sure that the semen analysis is not just okay, it's not just average. We want to see this semen analysis have really, really good levels where each parameter is sitting within optimal ranges. And positive thing to take away is that you can change it. It can be worked on. We probably need to try and work out what's actually impacting that. Sometimes we can't be exactly specific and know the one or two things that's impacting it. But as I'm going to say and share with you in a moment, there are some common things that we can go through to see what might be impacting it. Now, I want to drop a little bomb here with you tonight about something that's super important and it provides a lot of information about the sperm that you don't get from an average semen analysis. And this test can be really, really useful if you are planning to go into fertility treatment, or if you have decided you don't want to go through fertility treatment, if you're just going to try and conceive naturally and you want to really increase your chances and make sure you're doing everything you can, then it's worthwhile checking in with your doctor if they have or if they can request the SCSA test, which is the Sperm Chromatin Structure Assay. If you say SCSA, they will know what you're talking about. What this is actually doing is checking whether there's any fragmentation of the DNA of the sperm. So basically it's checking the integrity of the DNA of the sperm. And when you have a standard semen analysis done, this is not performed. If you have high levels of abnormal sperm, this test is it gives a lot of extra information because we can find out whether or not there's actually an issue with the information, the DNA within that abnormal sperm as well. So this test has been said that it could possibly be the test that gives an indication of the fertility potential of the sperm. As opposed to, say, the count, while I'd love to see it up around 20 to 50 million, we don't actually know that that's necessarily going to increase the fertility potential in isolation, because if they're not swimming well, or if the rapids are low, we don't know that the fertility potential is going to be any better. But we do have information from research that says that the DNA fragmentation of the sperm can influence the outcome of either trying to conceive naturally or with fertility treatment. So there was one study that this was done with insemination. And this is why I think it's really useful if you're going to be going through fertility treatment to actually check this out with your doctor. I know fertility treatment costs a lot of money. It's emotionally, physically, mentally, you've got to go all in. So some of these tests can be useful to do. So with 387 insemination cycles, they found that when the DNA fragmentation was less than 30%, which is what they're often looking for, there was a 19% chance of a live birth. Whereas when the DNA fragmentation went above 30%, which is often just what they'll say is just outside of normal, the chance of a live baby went down to 1.5% with one insemination cycle. So I think a lot of the people that I work with would actually like to get an idea about those statistics and have an idea of whether something has had a large chance of working or not. So this is something that's worthwhile talking to your doctor about. This test is generally requested only through your fertility clinic or a fertility specialist. So you may need to, if you're not already at that stage, you might need to either seek out a referral, or you could check, your GP might have access to that test. But if you're wanting to do everything to prepare for a fertility cycle, then this could be a worthwhile test for you to investigate. If you have done, say with me, if I've been working with a couple for 3 to 6 months, and we're addressing what we think are the issues that could be impacting upon the semen analysis, and maybe we see the count come up, but a couple hasn't conceived yet, then this might be a test that we go to next to see if there is actually an issue with the fragmentation of the sperm. And if there is, then there might be other factors that we need to actually address. So I just wanted to drop that in there, that when we're talking about analyzing the sperm, the semen analysis is one way that we can do that, but there might be further investigations that you can talk to your doctor about getting done. So analyze them, make sure your results are as good as they possibly can be to help with fertility. Not just average. We want to do everything we can to increase your chances of conception. The second thing that I want you to do is to assess, this is probably going to be done with someone like myself, which is to assess your overall health and any factors that might be impacting upon what we're seeing in the semen analysis. So for example, it could be anything from, and this is where a thorough health history comes into play, but it might be everything from a medical history in terms of undescended testes or a genital tract infection. It could be trauma to the testes as a young kid that we might need to factor in. We also need to consider medications. There are certain really common medications that a man might be prescribed, blood pressure medications, anti-reflux medications, really, really common drugs that could be impacting upon what we'll see in the semen analysis. So, So we do need to consider those parts of the puzzle, but also looking at the big picture of the man's health. How often are you getting sick? In the last 3 months, have you had a high fever? Have you had an infection? Are you getting sick really frequently? And if you are, why? We need to work that out. But we also need to factor in digestion. How well are you absorbing the nutrients from the food that you're actually eating? If you're having chronic digestive issues, that might be an indication that we're just not getting the nutrients into every single cell of your body. And the sperm are a cell of your body. So while it might seem that your digestive health is unrelated to your semen analysis, it actually could play a really big piece of the puzzle. We might need to factor in inflammation. If there's any signs of inflammation in the body, this can change what's happening, particularly with the abnormals, normals. Genetics, hormones, oftentimes in terms of studies too, in terms of analysing, often get some hormone investigations done to see what's actually happening there. Is the brain sending the right message out to the testes? Do we see the brain is sending out the right message, but there's not the right response? Is testosterone levels low along with that? So the hormone studies can help to give us an idea about what's actually happening. Stress can play a role. A man's body weight can play a role in terms of what's happening with his semen analysis. So it's really a matter of assessing a man's overall health and any area that might be impacting upon the semen or the sperm production from those areas. And someone like myself who's been working in natural fertility will know all those areas of your health to cover and why they're so important and how these could actually impact the sperm. But the other side of that is, what are we actually going to do to work on it? We don't want to just assess it and find we need to work it out what's going on. But then we also need to work on how can we actually address this? How can we actually treat it? So once we've analysed the semen analysis, got some good information about the DNA of the sperm, maybe looked at hormone studies, we've assessed what's happening in the male's overall health and anything that I know that might be impacting upon the sperm production or the health of the sperm. The third thing that we need to do, along with addressing all of those areas that might be impacting his health, is addressing what's happening in his environment that might be impacting upon the sperm. Now, sometimes I must admit I do get a bit frustrated because I see, I'm going to be generalizing here, and if you're watching this, and I can't say that this is specific to what's happening in you and your relationship, but this is, I see it quite a bit in clinic, is that I have women who are doing literally everything. They would take, I don't ask them, but if I did, they would take 10 vitamins a day. They would take a herbal potion. They would go to their acupuncturist as well. They would be doing meditation. They would be doing stress release. They would be literally everything that I ask them to do. They will do everything. And then I sometimes have men that are a little less, or they're a little reluctant to want to actually do anything. I often find it's just getting them in the door. And once I've got them in the door and we can sit down and really, because I know how to relate to them. I know how to relate to this, because often men are very rational thinkers and they want to, generalizing, they have an analytical brain that wants to understand exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm happy to go into that detail with them. I'm totally fine if they're skeptical of what I'm actually doing, because I can practically break it down and explain what we're actually doing. So I often find that just getting them in the door and sharing this information with them can help them to want to address their environment. But without coming into the door and sitting down in practice with me, or online, I do find it hard when the female partner just takes home the information and shares it. But you'll know that within your own relationship, whether that might be a factor or not. But tonight we want to address those toxins that might be in his environment, because we do know that toxins in today's world are having an impact on our semen, the semen analysis, or the averages that we're seeing in the semen analysis. And that could be very varied. It could be cigarettes, although these are probably likely things that a doctor may have mentioned. So cigarettes, definitely alcohol. The amount of alcohol that I suggest for men to have can often make their jaw drop, or not suggest to have the amount that I recommend they reduce it to, let me say. So I normally say to men that I don't want to see them have any more than 6 units of alcohol a week spread out over the whole week. So that's not even 6 units of alcohol on one Friday night or one Saturday night. That's 6 units of alcohol spread out over the whole week. Cigarettes are a no-go. Definitely not helping with fertility at all. There's no limit that I think is okay for you to have, really, when you're trying to conceive. And I sometimes still am this practitioner that understands that people are going through that, they are not ready to work on their addiction, and I've held their hand and tried to nurture them through that and help them. But sometimes it's just a matter of being firm. There is no healthy amount of cigarettes that's going to help with fertility. They need to be gone. It's also a matter of considering what's happening in a male's occupation. So a male may be working in an environment where his body is getting really hot. Sometimes this is manual labor jobs. It might be I live in an area where there's high chemicals in terms of a golf course, so it could be something that they're working with in terms of chemicals. It might be factors to do with farming, or any way that their occupation exposes them to chemicals. And so what this comes back to is a man actually analysing his own work environment, either with himself or with his occupational health team member at work, or sometimes it's coming into clinic. I've literally had to sit with some men before and brainstorm about ways that they might potentially be exposed to any toxins or chemicals. We also need to factor in what hobbies they've got and whether that's actually influencing their environmental exposure to toxins regularly. So that could be things like anything that involves spray painting. So let's say even something like model cars, if they were using a spray paint, or if they were doing a lot of work around the home and it involved chemicals, or even bike riding. If their hobby is bike riding, which is so healthy for their body in a lot of other ways, but if they're bike riding a lot, and because it just holds the testes so close to the body, they just get hotter, and that heat might potentially be impacting upon the sperm, so sperm production. So we do need to factor in his hobbies as well. And then of course there's the home environment. So are you living right on a main road where there is high levels of fumes from cars? Again, this might come back to not just work, but home. Are you living on a farm where there's lots of chemicals? Any way that your home, even in terms of paints, what paints are you using in your home if you're decorating or renovating? Factoring in all those pieces of the toxin puzzle that he might be exposed to. So tonight, these are the 3 main things that I want you to start focusing on. I'm going to leave it here with you tonight. I want you to go away and make sure these areas are either analysed with me, with your doctor, with another natural fertility expert, and then down the track more, we can talk about other specific things that you can look at. But I'm going to recap it for you because there's quite a bit of information. 1, we need to get you to have a really, really thorough analysis done. Maybe that's a semen analysis alone, but you must have it assessed from optimal levels. And please don't rely on your fertility specialist to do it from optimal. They're really going to be checking just to make sure it's okay. So come and have it assessed with someone like myself, and let's check that it's as good as it can possibly be. A part of that analysis might also be checking the DNA fragmentation, which is the PSA test. That can be a really useful one to do if you're planning to invest in assisted reproductive techniques, or if you haven't done it and you're moving ahead with assisted reproductive techniques but it's not happening. And lastly, another reason why you might do that test is if you've decided that you don't want to go through anything, you just want to try and conceive on your own naturally, and you want to get all the information that you possibly can have about any areas that you need to work on. And then the other part of the analysis would be potentially getting some hormone studies done to see what's actually happening between the message from the brain to the testes. So step 1, analyze all of that. Step 2, assess all of those different parts of his body and health that might potentially be impacting on the sperm production. And remember, I said it could be everything from medical history to infections, to inflammation, to medications, to digestion. It's really, really broad. And the third step is to make sure you address, and I guess as I said, as a part of that, we would want to make sure we're working on those factors. And then the third thing is to address the environment and environmental toxins that might be impacting upon sperm production. So I want to leave that all with you. I want you to go away and start to do these investigations. If you're right at the beginning of your fertility journey, or you haven't had these investigations done, you need to go and speak to a health professional, even just your GP, to get a standard semen analysis done. And then please, if you don't know where to go, reach out to me, send me a private message. You can email me, which is at Jacqueline Harris, JACLYN, at JACLYNHARRIS.com. Email me and I can send you a booking link so that we can actually get you booked in for a consultation to really investigate this out and work out what we need to focus on.